took a little bit different path. Curriculum kind of directs us toward the life of Jesus. So we started looking at Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, beginning in Matthew chapter 5. Tonight we're going to look at Matthew chapter 6. First question on your handout is the question, how do you feel when an individual, a wealthy individual, gives a large sum of money with the attachment that a building be named after him or her? What do you think of a person like that?
Well, if it's for a hospital and there's a pediatric unit or a cancer treatment unit or something like that, I think it's great.
Okay. So would you say that what they are doing is a good thing?
Sure. Yes.
For the most part. Depends on the reason they want in their name.
Do what?
To me, it depends on the reason that they want it in their name.
Okay. So why would you think they'd want their name on that building?
Self-importance.
Yeah.
Or it could be charity. It depends on the person.
Yeah, if a person, and this just looking at it from a human standpoint, if a person donated a tremendous amount of money to build a building in a hospital, we would think that'd be a very noble thing, wouldn't we? If they donated it with a stipulation, the only way I'm going to do this is if you put my name on that building, then their intentions, to me, become a little less noble. And why would that be the case?
Well, it's on the chapter, a lot of it is Jesus talking about that very thing, about people being hypocrites and why they're doing things.
Yeah, the question becomes, what are they really after? Are they really just doing this in order to help people, or are they after recognition? Is it it makes you question their motives, doesn't it? And so, like Steve pointed out, that's really what chapter 6 is about when it comes to religion and the practice of Christianity. What are our motives behind what are we doing? Why do we do the things that we do? Is it enough just to do good? Is that all God's concerned with?
He didn't have many things good to say about the Pharisees and the scribes, and that's what you'd be doing in life. You did that way.
Yeah, did they do good things? Yeah, they helped the poor, didn't they? Did they pray? Yeah, they were people of prayer. They were very fervent in their prayer. Did they ever fast? Yeah, they fasted a lot. But what was their motive in doing all those things? Yeah, to be seen of men, right? It was recognition and fame among men. And so that's what we're going to read about here in chapter 6. If I can, somebody start reading here and read the first 4 verses.
Take heed that you do not your alms before men to be seen of them, otherwise you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But when thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know thy right hand what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly.
Okay, so question number 2 on our sheet is, did some individuals in Jesus' day try to publicize their generosity? Okay, how did they do that? What was the example that Jesus gave?
Giving of alms.
Okay, it was the giving of alms, right? And they did it before men, but how did they do it? What's a specific example he notes there?
Sounding the trumpet.
Yeah, they sounded a trumpet. And so generally, I think most commentators agree the idea is they would go out on a public street and they would blow that trumpet, and that trumpet basically signaled to anybody who needed something to come to them, and then they would give to them. Well, you can imagine it caused a public spectacle. The fact that they're out here in the middle of the public blowing trumpets while they're doing these good deeds. But their sole motivation in doing them, was it to really help somebody who was in need? Is that what they wanted to do? No, their sole motivation was to be seen of men. That's what they wanted. So they wanted men to see them doing these good things, and they wanted them to recognize them and praise them for their public acts of generosity. And, you know, we mentioned before, what we do as individuals, what men do, is of great importance to God. And so does God expect us to be kind people? Yeah. Does God expect us to do good deeds? Yeah. Does God expect us to be generous givers? Okay. But he also expects us to do those things with the right motives, right? And so when you look at these people here, you know, they were being kind, they were doing good deeds, they were giving generously, but the problem was their heart, their motive. And when you look at the Sermon on the Mount, you know, that's really the theme, I think, of the Sermon on the Mount. We studied last week the idea of getting past, you know, the letter of the law, the specifics, to really getting down to the motive. You know, why are you not murdering somebody? Is it because you don't hate them? Because you love them? You know, what's the motive behind why you're doing what you're doing? And he kind of continues that idea in chapter 6. You know, why are we giving? Why are we praying? Why are we doing good deeds for other people? You know, what's our motive behind doing all these things? So God expects us to have the right motive in why a person does what they do. Why a person is kind, why a person does good deeds, why a person gives generously is important to God too. So we read about these men, of course, who were publicizing their generosity. And what future reward were they going to get for that? Question number 3.
The glory of men.
Yeah. So really, as far as, you know, what they were going to receive of it in the future from God, was God going to reward what they did? Why not? Well, weren't they doing what he told them to do? It's the motive, right? It's the heart. It's the inward man. Why are we doing what we're doing? And so the only reward that they were going to get is an earthly one. The only recognition that they were going to receive is the recognition of men. God wasn't going to recognize them for what they were doing. In fact, Jesus makes the statement there, I think it's recorded as they have their reward. And really that's a statement of accounting. And basically Jesus is saying they have all the reward they're going to get. You know, they're not getting anything from me for what they're doing. They're not going to get any recognition from God. And so they received all that they were ever going to receive. You know, I was kind of thinking about as I was reading over and going through this section over this past week about the story of Ananias and Sapphira, you know, in Acts chapter 5, verses 1 through 11. And you think about what they did. How many people would be willing to sell their land and give some of that money to the church today? Think there'd be a lot of people who would do that? No, I doubt it. You know, that was pretty unique what they were willing to do. Were they doing a good deed? Yeah, they were. The problem was, what was their motive behind doing it?
Recognition.
Yeah, it seems to be the recognition of men. Now, I know somebody probably says, well, they lied about it too, and that's true also. But what was their motive for doing what they were doing? You know, just doing a good deed is not enough in the sight of God. We have to have the right motive in our hearts whenever we do things that God tells us to do. And so why should we be doing good deeds? Why should we be helping other people?
To lead them to God.
Yeah, it's really just because somebody needs something, right? Because you care about them, because you have compassion toward them. We want to help them. And so we're willing to do whatever we can to accomplish that. So the only future, there wasn't any future reward that they were going to see. The only reward that they were going to get was earthly in nature. So Jesus kind of he talks about what these men were doing in his day and age, and then he kind of gives us a formula to follow in our giving. And so in verses 3 and 4, what kind of giving or what kind of style did Jesus tell us to adapt in our giving? Okay, giving in secret. And what does that mean?
Not everybody has to know that you did that.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, doing something quietly, right? Not drawing undue attention to yourself. Keep it private. Keep it quiet. We might do something, or we might give to somebody. Do I need to go out and tell everybody about that? Why would I? I mean, the only purpose for my doing that would be so that men would know and recognize me, right? And so Jesus talks about this idea, don't let is it your left hand or your right hand? I don't remember which one he puts first, but don't let your hands, one hand know what your other hand is doing. What does that mean?
Good secrecy, not to be seen.
Yeah, not even to acknowledge yourself, basically, right? Feel good or puffed up about yourself or what you're doing. Your right hand says to your left hand, "Good job, buddy." Just gave somebody something that they needed. So it's again this idea of just helping people because you want to help somebody. You're not looking for recognition. You're not looking to feel good about yourself. That's not why you're doing it. And you certainly don't need the praise of men. Jesus talks about a couple of different things. Well, 3, I guess, main things in this passage about not doing these things before men. Giving is one of them. The next section deals with praying. And the next section deals with fasting. We really don't do much of that, if any. I don't know of anybody who does, but maybe there's somebody in the audience who does, or somebody listening. That third one doesn't really apply to us much today. But let's ask this question. Is it wrong to do those things when men can see us? Is that what Jesus is teaching? Is it wrong to give when somebody else sees what you're giving? Is it wrong to pray when somebody else sees you praying? Okay, so what's the lesson that Jesus is emphasizing here?
Don't be a hypocrite with it.
Okay, so it's not wrong to give when men see us, but it's wrong to give so that men will see us. That should be our motive. We talk about praying in public. Is it wrong to pray in public? Jesus said, go in your closet, right, and shut your door, and your Father, which is in secret, shall reward you openly. So does that mean that we can't pray in public? No, but if the only time I do pray is in public, then I'm doing it for the wrong reasons, right? If it's an extension of my ordinary life, I'm not trying to do it to be seen of men. I don't want any recognition. It's just what I do. And so it's not wrong in those instances to be seen of men, but if we're just doing it so that men will see us, then that's when it becomes wrong in nature.
Clint also shouldn't, like when we lead a public prayer, that's what we're doing is we're leading it, we're planting the seed, but each person that's hearing it should be praying also.
Yeah, there should be a sentiment of heart and mind whenever a public prayer is certainly being uttered. We should be able to say, we should know what was said at the end of it, be able to say amen. So Jesus talks about prayer here, and we're not going to deal a whole lot with it. There's a lot in this chapter. But in verse 5, what name does Jesus call people who just pray for show? Hypocrites. And why does he call them a hypocrite? I know I've mentioned that word before. Does anybody remember what the meaning of it is in the original language?
Does it mean an actor?
Yeah, it means an actor who puts on a show, basically. You're appearing or you're pretending to be someone you're not. And so it'd be like an actor who's playing a part in a play. So why would Jesus condemn that?
Shouldn't be put on a show.
Yeah, is Christianity supposed to be fake? I mean, everything we do as Christians is supposed to be genuine and sincere, isn't it? It's supposed to be from the heart. It's not supposed to be an act. It's not supposed to be a show for other people. Just supposed to be a manner of living. The way that we are and the people that we are and, the things that we normally do. And so Jesus said those people who go out and just pray for show, were hypocrites. What were some of the things that he mentions there? I'm not going to go through and read all this, but what were some of the things that he mentioned there that they did to make their prayers showy, I guess, in the eyes of other people?
Repetitions.
Yeah, vain repetitions, right? There's is it wrong to repeat yourself in prayer? I don't know how many people here, I don't know if you would acknowledge it or not, but I feel, I don't know if I'd say confident, but I feel okay acknowledging it, that when I pray a prayer, it's basically the same prayer. Anybody else like that?
Well, there's certain things that we should pray for.
Okay.
Always. And you pray for, well, I guess, whatever you think the needs are at maybe that particular time, too. But I think there are some things that should be in every prayer that you pray. Whether it's in public or whether it's private.
Yeah, so did Jesus condemn repetition? Vain, right? Empty or meaningless. A lot of times, I don't know, sometimes we have a lot of familiar phrases, I'll just say it that way, that we all use in our prayers. And they're kind of, I think they're phrases that have been thought out. Man, they sound good, you know. But when we say those things, if we don't really mean them, you know, if we're just vainly repeating some phrase, then we're not doing ourselves any good, are we? And so that's one of the things that these men were good for, is these empty or meaningless repetitions. What else? What are some other things that he mentions there?
Much speaking.
Yeah. So how long does a prayer have to be effective? Depends on if it's an opening or closing, right? Isn't that the long one, Lanny? That's what he says. You know, I think sometimes, and maybe even, you know, when you're leading a public prayer, you think, well, I need to stretch this out a little bit. You know, I need to make this long enough to make it relevant. But what does a prayer need to be effective?
Sincere.
Yeah, it needs to be genuine, doesn't it? It needs to be sincere. Length has nothing to do with it. You know, sometimes we may just approach God in prayer, and we may just have one thing that we need to talk to God about. We can do that, and maybe we can do it under 15 seconds. I don't know. Is that prayer going to be effective? Well, if it's the genuine expression of the heart, then yes. If it's a vain repetition, you know, whenever we say prayer, we don't always have to throw everything else in that we normally pray about. There's nothing wrong with it. But don't always have to do that to be effective. It doesn't have to be long to be effective. And so these guys were famous for stretching out their prayers. And people thought, wow, they're really religious people. You know, look how long they can pray. So all those things they did, you know, they were just show. They were to be seen of men, those vain repetitions, those things that sounded good, that they repeated that really didn't mean them. All those things Jesus condemned. So let's go, where are we at here? Let's go number 6. And somebody read verse 8 for us here.
Be ye not therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him.
Okay, so the question is, if God knows what we need before we ask him, why should we pray?
You go to a restaurant, I think they know you need food. You should have asked for it. Not gonna match their fears, so.
Okay, that's a good point, yes. You know, I think sometimes in our prayers too, we think we need to inform God. You know, we need to give him all these details of everything that's going on. Well, does God already know that? God knows what's happening, right? When we think about prayer demonstrates a couple of things. I think, first of all, it demonstrates the fact that we need God. You know, the fact that we're approaching him. He already knows what we need, but yet we're approaching him and asking. It shows our dependence upon him. What about spending time talking to people? Is speaking to one another in a relationship important? Husbands, most of your wives are back there, so. Yeah? Okay, just brief and to the point, huh? Yeah, it is. You know, any time that you spend talking to somebody in a relationship, that builds that relationship, doesn't it? So it's an important part of it.
And most of us don't like people who only call when they really, really need something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess sometimes as a husband, I'm kind of guilty of that. Go ahead, Daryl.
I think prayer is for our benefit, maybe more than God. He already knows everything, knows what we need. It's not that he needs to build a relationship with us, we need to build a relationship with him. So it's all about our benefit, getting our mind in the right place and our thinking right and our reverence for God and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, does God want us to talk to him? Does he want us to pray? Yeah, he wants to hear from us, doesn't he? I mean, you think about how the Bible describes our relationship with God, the parent-child relationship. You know, how many of us as parents want to hear about our children and their life and what's going on in it? I mean, we want to hear those things. We may already know it, but we still want to talk to them about it, don't we? But prayer is also a way for us to invoke the blessings of God and to have God intervene too. So all those things are necessary, even though God already knows what we need before we ask him. So let's go to the idea of fasting here. And somebody read verses 16 through 18 for us.
Moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear in the midst to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou fastest, anoint thine head, and wash thy face, that thou appear not unto men to fast, but unto thy Father which is in secret. Thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly.
Okay, so when you read about these certain individuals here in Jesus' day, what kind of physical appearance did they assume whenever they were fasting? What are some things they did?
Made their eyes look sunken.
Yeah, they altered their physical appearance, didn't they? So that when somebody saw them, you know, they said, "Man, you look awful. You know, what's going on? What's happening? Oh, I'm fasting." What else? Anything else? What did he mention there?
My version says gloomy face and neglect your appearance.
Yeah, so it's just their overall emotional state, right? When a person runs into them, and you know how it is when you run into a person, you can tell that person's having a good day generally, if they're down a little bit, and so they say, you know, you're not happy today, you know, or something's, you're sad faced. What's going on? Well, I'm fasting. Pretty rough, you know. So they intentionally did things so that when people saw them, it would, you know, they would ask about it, or it would appear to them that they were fasting. You know, again, fasting is not really something that we do a whole lot, if any, in our world today. But what was the purpose of fasting? You know, obviously it was abstaining from food, right? But why?
So you can focus on being devout to the Word of God.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have some questions concerning fasting, because we do see an awful lot of that especially in the church. And yet it's not something that's, we're going to go start a project, we go have a feast, and then go start a project, and they always fasted before they've even done something. And I'm joking a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think there is more to fasting than we put into our worship of God.
Yeah, and basically the reasoning behind it was, you know, a matter becomes so important to you, it becomes more important than your food. you know. So you instead of worrying about everything that's going on in your daily life, you just want to concentrate on this single matter. And like you said, I mean, when you look at the New Testament, Jesus fasted. I mean, his disciples fasted. You have let's see, what would be some of the other examples? Well, Paul fasted often, didn't he?
Before they sent them out.
Yeah, in Acts 14, right? Yeah, before they sent Paul and Silas on their missionary journey, the church fasts and they prayed. There's one other that kind of rung a bell for a minute. It's already gone. So, but anyway, when you look through it, I mean, it was a pretty, a pretty important part of the life of the first century church. Now, in the Old Testament, it was commanded, on certain days. Certain days, like the Day of Atonement, they were supposed to forget about food and just concentrate on the matter at hand, a very important matter. In the New Testament, you don't find a command. Is it a good and a beneficial practice? Well, yeah. I mean, I think so if you do it for the right reasons. But you don't really have a command. Now, obviously, Jesus knew, I think, the customs of his day and age and expected that a lot of people would do it. But I don't think it would be a bad thing, do you?
No, I think it's, like I said, I think it's something that needs to be practiced. A few of us fat boys need to do it more often.
Yeah, but it's
But I think it's something that needs to be examined, just like anything else that we do, that we can't pass it off as something that was just something that they did at that time because it was custom. I don't believe many of the practices. I think it does have some beneficial. Anytime I do.
Oh, yeah.
If I do without food, it's making me do something, or fast for a reason. I'm not saying
Right.
stand up in front of the church and say I'm going to fast for this, but I think it is something that needs to be examined a little more than we do.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting here because we're talking about it openly, but Jesus, when he talked about this idea, he actually said you conceal the fact that you're doing it. Don't go out here and try to publicize it in any way. You don't want to alter your physical appearance so people will notice it. You don't want to try to alter your emotional state or act like you're in a different emotional state because of it. But basically, Jesus said if you're going to do it, don't let there be any change in your appearance or really in your behavior, obviously, besides the refraining from food. But why is that the case?
I guess I don't understand your question.
Well, why would he say, leave other people out of it? Yeah, fasting it's not a matter between, two men. It's a matter between God and man, isn't it? And that's really where again, you go back to the idea of God being in secret prayer, giving, helping people. It's not about things between me and you. It's about things between me and God. And so the only people who need to know about it are me and God. And so God alone, God rewards us greater than any man. Jesus talks about, we don't have much time here, but Jesus talks about storing up treasures. And where did he urge us to store up treasures? Yeah, in heaven. Where did he urge us not to store up treasures? On earth. And why is that the case? 2 reasons he gives there. Yeah, earthly things are corruptible, right? Everything ages, everything dies, deteriorates, decays. Earthly things are not going to last forever. And the second thing is they're insecure, right? Can earthly things be stolen? Can natural disasters wipe out earthly things? Yeah, when we depart from this life, what's going to happen to all our earthly things? Give them to somebody else, aren't they? So, if we put all of our energy and our time and our resources into earthly treasures, we're going to be sorely disappointed in the end. He talks about life. He talks about food, drink, clothing. And of course, Jesus talks about not worrying about those things. He's not suggesting, not to be prepared for the future. But don't be overly concerned and cared and focused upon these things. The Bible teaches us that men have to work in order to eat. But Jesus also taught us that we don't live by physical bread alone, right? So we need to be sure that we're not overly concerned with the things of this world where it's causing us to put spiritual matters aside. Anything else in there anybody want to mention? Got like 6 or 7 questions left. But how about question 13 there? It talks about the birds of the air. Well, why are the birds consistently fed and clothed by God?
Because God watches over them.
Yeah, and why does he watch over them? Yeah, they're valuable to him, right? They're worth something to him. If birds are valuable and worth something to God to the point that he's going to feed and clothe them, what's man worth? I mean, you think about us, yeah, and that's the lesson Jesus said. You're more valuable than many sparrows, right? Than many birds. But listen, we're God's children. I mean, what do you think we're worth to God? What are your children worth to you? They're worth everything, aren't they? We're going to do everything within our power to see that they're fed, clothed, taken care of. God's no different. So all of us need to take a lesson from nature there. Don't worry about the things of this earth. God's going to see to it. Anything else?
The last 2 verses there, 33 and 34, are
Yes, sir.
very powerful.
Yeah, worry. Does it help to fret over the future? No, it doesn't help today, and it won't help tomorrow either. So, worry is one of those things that we probably do too much of as humans, but as far as ever helping anything, it never has. Can't benefit by worrying. So, all right, well, that's chapter 6.